Hey there, Bookkeeping Side Hustle community. Glad to have you back. We're here with our second stream with OnPay. They are they have sponsored these two sessions to help us learn about what payroll is and what businesses need when it comes to payroll. And today we're going to learn about how to make money actually offering that. Our instructor again today is Valerie Heckman. She's the accountant community manager at OnPay, and is here to answer our questions and to teach us, and allow us to just learn from her years of expertise. I was just chatting with her about her long experience in the industry with multiple vendors in our industry. Also, a great person to learn from. Okay, so the tips today are really going to be about kind of monetizing our efforts. Other so clients might ask us payroll questions, and that's fine. But at some point, we need to start getting paid for this. We need to pay for different levels of. We need to get paid for different levels of support, and she's going to talk to us through a lot of that. So mostly, I'm just going to let her run the show here. And so, Valerie, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll just dive right into your material.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for having me. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm our accountant community manager here at OnPay, which really means that I spend my time talking to accountants and bookkeepers about what you're looking for from a payroll service and how we can support you. I've spent the last 12 years or so working with accountants and bookkeepers across several vendors. And a little about me: located in Naperville, Illinois, where it snowed this week, but it seems like it might melt. So trying to keep warm. Okay, a little bit about OnPay, and then we'll dive into the content.
Sure.
So we are a full service payroll solution. If you have clients with between 1 and over 500 employees or contractors, including some special business types like nonprofits and restaurants and farms. And we're going to get into a little bit today about navigating the different payroll software offerings, but wanted to tell you a little bit about us before we get going.
Sure.
We handle federal, state, local, and year-end filings for you and your clients. We have integrations with popular accounting softwares like QuickBooks and Xero, along with some leading HR and benefit apps. And we have dedicated partner support with payroll experts that'll help you along the way, including getting clients set up. And we offer revenue share and discounts for you, as well as free payroll for your practice. So just a little bit about us before we get into what we'll cover today, which is some reasons to offer payroll. So Kate, thanks for that great introduction. We'll be talking about why you should consider adding payroll to your bookkeeping practice, a few of the basics of payroll, some things that I think you should know about the software landscape, as well about payroll itself if you're thinking about adding this as a service, ways to offer it. There's kind of 3 different approaches that we see firms like yours take, and then a couple of kind of tips and guidance along getting started offering this as a service.
Awesome.
All right, so let's start off with why should we think about offering payroll? Well, I would say that the first thing is that in most cases, it's a natural extension of the current services you're offering for additional revenue. Most small businesses need payroll eventually. They might have one just themselves now, but the goal of working with a bookkeeper, of course, is to have a successful business. Successful businesses often grow and need to add employees, right? So even if you've got clients that are on their own right now and don't pay anybody, the chances are if things go well, they will in the future. So that is something to consider. Insights into clients' operations and cash flow. So we find that most bookkeepers and accountants, when they're working with clients on payroll, they tend to be a lot more involved in that client's operations. They know what's going on. They know when new employees are coming in. They know when cash flow is tight. And it just allows you to do more for your clients along the way with that relationship. It can ease burden on clients. So when we've done research, we've found that a lot of small business owners, if they're handling payroll themselves, they might spend 18 plus hours on that payroll a week. If they're involved in a lot of the time tracking elements and they're doing a lot of these things manually, it can be pretty time and labor intensive. So it's a way that you can ease the burden on clients. And don't worry, we'll talk through how you can avoid spending that much time yourself involved in payroll.
Don't sign me up for that.
Yeah. So that's typically if they're doing a lot of it themselves and they're running into headaches, but we'll talk about doing that more effectively. Strengthening client relationships, I mentioned that before. The more involved you are in the day-to-day life of their business, the stronger that relationship tends to be, especially if you're avoiding them from running into costly mistakes. I mentioned this already, supporting people as they grow and expand. Most businesses have that goal of being able to grow to the point where they might need help, right? And so this is a way that you can continue to work with them along that process. Staying competitive, if you kind of take a look at what your peers are doing, they may be offering those payroll services, so it can help you stay relevant to your client and not have them be tempted to go to someone else who's doing a bit more, and meeting their needs along the way, of course.
I have some comments on this just from my
Sure.
experience that the natural extension, it like I have a small bookkeeping practice, and I actually target small businesses, but almost all of them have gotten to the point, that all of my clients, where they end up needing payroll. And so I was targeting people who didn't need payroll because it was
Sure.
scary, like solopreneur, like service-based companies. And then but then they all are going to hire someone, y'all, so we can't hide from this forever, this tough task of like learning what payroll is. And I don't do payroll for anybody, but I did learn what I needed to learn to support them. And even if they only become an S corp, even if they were like solo operation and then make that S corp election, they got to run payroll. And so to simplify that is another reason why, like, we can't escape this. So it's get out in front of it, so you're ready, because that call is going to come. Hey, I'm going to hire someone, or hey, I'm going to put myself on payroll. And then the advisory is all like the kind of the rage right now, and just what you were saying about insights into their operations and cash flow. Like, it's such a stressful thing to think about hiring someone for these business owners, and to be able to say, like, here's what, a minimum level of cash that you might need before we make that make that judgment. Or they want someone to talk through this stuff with them, and kind of, it's their decision, but to kind of give them the support and the green light, like, yes, you can do this, you are ready, and here's why, because I've run the numbers for you. So all these are, they're the exact reasons why, not we should, like, we're going to end up offering payroll, y'all. So we got to be ready.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of making the decisions around to what degree you want to be involved in that and how you're going to approach it. So getting out ahead of it is excellent. And thank you for sharing your experience, because I hear that all the time. People, payroll, sales tax, no, like,
Right.
I don't want to be involved in those things ever. Well, the world that we live in, if you're going to work with small business owners, you're going to run into things that are compliance related that maybe you don't want to consider yourself a full-blown expert in, but you should have at least working knowledge to talk through and help your clients navigate what options they do have in the software space. So totally. And if I can learn payroll, you all can learn payroll.
Same.
So some payroll basics to know. And speaking of the software landscape, I really bucket the payroll options on the market into two categories. And I know I'm a little biased here because I work for OnPay, and we fall into this full service bucket. But to kind of help you talk through this, I would say the question that your clients are going to ask if they get to that point where, hey, we need to hire somebody, is what's out there, what's best for us, and to kind of understand what's going on is critical there. One of the things that I hear sometimes from bookkeepers who have never been involved in payroll before, especially if maybe you're new to this, they think that they're going to be like really, really heavily involved in calculations and entering every line item of a paycheck and doing all that stuff. And that is incredibly intimidating, right? In the software landscape today, when we look at kind of the manual software, it's doing a certain percentage of the work for you. So it's typically doing the calculations, typically has some setup steps, but you're really managing all of the tasks. So the software still might be doing some of the heavy lifting, but you're managing the tasks. You might need to manage the updates depending on what that software provider offers you. You may have to push some things in or do some manual maintenance of that software. Typically, these manual type options still involve you paying the taxes and filing the forms, or your
Right.
client, you or your client. We'll talk more about that in a moment. It's typically you handling the corrections and notices. And as a result of especially those two things, you really need to be a payroll expert to
Right.
utilize these manual softwares, or at least have more working knowledge than you might with the options on the other side, which we'll talk about in a second. But this involves a lot of responsibility, a lot of work. You typically need to staff a software like that, and that's a fit for some practices, right? If you're a payroll veteran and you just happen to not be doing it right now, and you've got that experience, maybe that kind of program would be a good fit. What I see most folks in the market leaning towards, whether it's with OnPay or somebody else, is this full service model where some of the tasks are handled by the employer bookkeeper, but the compliance related tasks are handled by the provider, meaning the updates of making sure that all of the legislation and any changes that need to happen on the back end to calculate correctly are happening automatically. That the taxes and form filings, the remittance and the forms being filed are happening for you, and the responsibility of doing that accurately and on time is on the software provider.
Mm-hmm.
And then if something does go wrong, corrections and notices and things that may come through are also being handled for you. And typically this requires less expertise. I'm still going to recommend that you know a few things, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. But it generally, a lot of the responsibility is falling on the payroll provider to get the compliance pieces done. And as a result, it's less time commitment to utilize a software that's full service.
For sure. Like those scary looking notices that people get for all sorts of reasons. Some of them are like sort of like a nothing burger too, but to have that rep at OnPay to be able to say, can you put the support ticket in, they get back to you, it's like, oh yes, we'll fix it, or oh yes, this is nothing, or here's what it actually means. So that's I wouldn't even begin. I mean, what do you do? Put it in the chat GPT and hope it comes out right? Like if you don't have the support, I don't know. I don't know how I I couldn't imagine. I think it would be too stressful for me to not have a full service provider that provides support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Having that peace of mind that you have somebody to turn to in those
Yes.
cases, again, unless you have that expertise and you're staying on top of federal, state, and local legislation across the board, it can be a lot to manage, and a lot to manage effectively as well. So we tend to see folks looking at the full service options, but I wanted to kind of lay these both out to let you know that that they're out there. So kind of high level workflow. I'm not going to spend too much time in this, but want to give you just a sense, especially if you've never really been involved in running payroll, what this entails. So of course, the wages, aggregating all the hours and figuring out what overtime factors are going to be there. If there's multiple hourly pay types, are there bonuses? Are there reimbursements? All of the kind of collecting of what's gone on during the pay period,
Mm-hmm.
and then calculating, right? Factoring in those salary and hourly assignments, the deductions, the contributions, the garnishments, all of those things to get the actual net pay figured out. So in the case of software, maybe your client is using a time tracking software and that's going to bring the hours in, or maybe they're tracking those in some other way and we'll need to get them entered. But we're going to set up the paycheck. Most of the time, when you're doing the company and employee settings, you're getting all the pay items and things like the taxes and voluntary and involuntary deductions figured out, any child support or other types of garnishments figured out. And then that, of course, generates that paycheck. We notify the employees that they're being paid in some way and deliver that, whether it's through direct deposit, a paper check, or pay cards tend to be popular too these days. And then remitting the taxes. So some payroll providers will pull the tax money like OnPay does when you run the payroll. Others will pull that money when the time comes to pay the taxes when they're due. But that has to be remitted. If you're using a more manual system, you might actually have to go to the state websites and put the payments in, the federal EFTPS website, put the payments in. That can be a lot to stay up on top of, especially in today's world. people often have employees working in multiple states with the rise of remote work. If there's local payroll taxes, those have to be handled individually too. So a lot to manage if you don't have a partner helping you along. And then after paying the taxes, filing the tax forms. So that typically happens on a quarterly and annual basis, depending on the tax type and the agency. So that's kind of in a nutshell, what the workflow looks like. My recommendation is that you familiarize yourself with some other topics that are going to come up. And again, kind of how you decide to offer this, which we'll get into in a moment, may determine how much or how little you need to know. Knowledge is power. So I definitely recommend taking the time, if you're going to offer this as a service, to familiarize yourself with what the definitions of an employee versus a contractor are. That's a common question, especially if you've got a client that's hiring people for the first time.
Right.
So there's a lot of rules around that. What the requirements are going to be when somebody is hired, what forms need to be filed. Again, who's going to handle that? We'll talk about that with the providers a bit later. What gross and net pay kind of looks like. So at the highest level, that gross pay is the hours times the salary, or the wage hourly rate. Or if it's that's for hourly employees. If it's salary, you'd have what the salary amount is divided by the pay periods. So that's kind of the gross. And then the net, of course, is after we've considered all of the withholdings, those deductions and contributions and garnishments and anything else that follows. Pay schedules. So that is an important decision that your clients will need to make when you're setting things up. How frequently are they going to pay employees, and what are those pay periods going to look like? Familiarizing yourself with common pay types and overtime rules. Those can be pretty complicated, and hopefully you're utilizing a system that makes it kind of easy to understand what those are. But it's something that, if you can't answer questions about today, have a plan for where you're going to find that information if your clients ask it. There's a lot of different types of resources, especially depending on what professional organizations you might be a part of. They've got lots of resources. There's, of course, lots of things online. We can ask ChatGPT, but I don't know that I always trust the
Right,
answers.
exactly. It'll answer. It'll give you an answer.
It will give you an answer. Whether or not it's fully accurate will yet to be determined.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, you want to have a plan for, hey, when clients come to me with these types of questions, where am I going to find this, or who am I partnering with to get the info? Required and voluntary deductions and taxes, definitely something that you have to be aware of. So deductions, of course, the tax withholdings, but there can also be some different things that you have to consider from a garnishment perspective and that kind of thing. Benefits and the requirements around benefits. So this is something that's really changed a lot, I would say, in the last decade that I've been talking about payroll. 401k plans, workers' comp, those types of things used to be widely optional, but some states have set requirements around offering those to employees, especially depending on the size of the business. So that's something that you'll want to be prepared to help clients navigate, or work with a partner that'll help you navigate it. What the direct deposit workflow is going to look like, if that's something that your clients expect, which I would say in 2023, 2024, most want that electronic payment. And so understanding different providers might have some different options in terms of lead times, in terms of deadlines to submit to pay employees on time. So that's something you'll want to be familiar with how to navigate. And then another kind of piece quick on direct deposits too is how that's going to look on the bookkeeping perspective, right? That's your main domain. What is this going to look like when the info comes into QuickBooks, Xero, or whatever you're using? Making sure you understand how to explain some of those holding accounts and things to clients too. What's required to get a company registered to collect tax and to get those payments handled and those filings handled, especially if you're going to go the route of not doing those through a system. Registrations, in a lot of cases, we've got a partner that you can pay a bit more and have them handle getting the clients registered. that might be something that you want to help with and do yourself through the state websites to get some revenue out of your clients. Or it's something you might say, hey, client, you're going to have to go and register on your own. Here are some solutions that might do it for you. So that's something you'll want to navigate the process for as well. What year end looks like, W-2s and 1099s. Here it is again, mapping to the general ledger. So how is all this payroll data going to flow into the accounting software? That I think is an area that you can add a ton of value if you really get yourself familiar with payroll transactions and how they work from a liability and expense perspective. Even if there's nothing else that you get involved with in payroll, that's probably something that's going to come up, right? Because you want the books to be correct. And that is an area that I don't think I've come across many small businesses that know how to map their payroll transactions to the general ledger. Have you, Kate?
No. And I was going to say, so that's something that I do. And I think for the most part, that is kind of like repeatable. What's not repeatable is like the different pay schedules required in different states, or the benefits required in different states. And for me and a lot of people who watch these videos that I do, we're trying to build lifestyle businesses. And so in order to do that, we have to pay a little money to not have to become an expert in everything. Like, because the economic term is economies of scale. Like, we don't have the scale, and I do not want the scale. Could I learn the rules of the 50 states? Sure. But I'm not interested in doing that. Like, it's not rocket science, but it just takes time. And if I want to I don't get the benefit of the economies of scale where I've got like a whole army of payroll specialists working for me, doing payroll every day, all day. Then we can make money doing that. But like the payroll tax registration, that's a perfect example of, I tried to do it on my own, but I haven't even done it in all 50 states yet. And I've gotten to the point where it's like, there's no amount of money someone can pay me, because it's just the pain in the butt, because I don't have a procedure for like doing it in Wyoming.
Right.
Like, Wyoming I haven't done that yet. And I know it will be horrible whenever I do. But y'all don't have, you said you didn't do it. You have a partner that does those registrations. Is that right?
Yeah. So we partner with Middesk.
Okay.
So they have a per state registration. I believe it's a bit discounted if you go through us, if you're an OnPay customer, and then they take care of that part for you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a huge hassle, and there's benefits to every state being different, but man, when it comes to compliance and getting things set up with them, that's an area where it can be very frustrating that it changes so much from one state to the next.
Yeah. So there's
yeah,
I don't want to become
an area to decide what you want to do, but know that you're going to have to answer questions about it for sure, and having a plan is best.
Right.
And then controls and security. So kind of knowing what is to be expected about the information that's entered into the accounting systems from a payroll provider, what's in the payroll system itself, and kind of how that all goes together, because this is really sensitive data, right? Employees, social security numbers, tax IDs, all of those things you want to be mindful of as you're approaching this. Oop, sorry, my screen froze up a little bit here. Let me see. Come on. Oh, then it went too far. And then the tax filing. So if you joined us for the last session, this is familiar. We were talking about what's kind of needs to be handled on a quarterly and annual basis. So I wanted to put those dates in here. And, even if you're not going to be doing this side of things, it's important to make sure you can kind of speak to what those expectations are for filing and what the clients can expect to happen.
On this slide, this is the slide where I said everyone should rip it and put it on their social media. Like, these are social media posts. Like, take these exact same things and like copy it and make a Facebook post out of it, y'all, or LinkedIn post. These are, it makes us look smart. We know these expertise, and the business owners do not know these things. So anyway, we'll move on.
Help them anticipate. Hey, if you're going to start paying employees, these are the types of things that you're going to need to anticipate. Awesome. Well, let's jump into sort of the 3 ways that we see firms offering payroll. So the first is running it yourself. So you kind of taking the wheel and the ownership of the process. So even if you're working with somebody like OnPay, you might be the one that actually goes into the system and enters in those hours that you get from the client, and you run the payroll and you manage and kind of oversee the whole process. Obviously, this gives you the maximum insight, the maximum involvement in everything going on. But it does have higher responsibility. It does have higher risk. It is a bit more work. Still less work than if you're doing it totally manually, but you're still really involved along the way, which can be a good fit for some folks, especially if you've got that familiarity and you really want to sink your teeth into the payroll process. The next would be to monitor. So this is kind of that hybrid approach where your clients are the ones going in and handling their payroll, but you are someone who has access to that. You might decide to be involved in parts of like the setup and the mapping to the general ledger and that kind of thing. You might be a person that they can ask questions to, and you can go into the system and go, oh, I see what happened. You know, didn't add a pay type for bonuses. And so now it's not showing up on your list when you go to run payroll or whatever, right? That would be where you're kind of involved in the process, but you're not responsible for totally running the payroll. Now with this, if the clients are doing it, there is the opportunity for them to make more mistakes. And so, of course, being mindful of like, okay, if something does go wrong, who's going to be in charge of contacting support? Who's going to be the one that resolves that issue if it gets to the state and federal forms? You know, that's something to be mindful of if you go down this road, because there can be some gray areas. So you want to be very clear with your clients what's in scope and out of scope if you're going into their payroll account. And then referring. So it is what it sounds like. You would be, hey, these are a couple of payroll options, or this is the payroll option that we partner with. You recommend it to your clients, but they're really the ones that are working directly with the payroll provider. You may, or probably won't be very involved at all. But there can be some benefits, kind of depending on who you partner with. You might have things like revenue share, like we do at OnPay. You might have some other perks and incentives along the way for it. In this case, you can be kind of that, hey, I'm advising you on what software options are available in the market. Maybe you help them navigate that or sit in on demos and ask the right questions and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the client takes over running their payroll and maintaining that relationship with the vendor.
Well, because it's important to remember that, like, OnPay, your relationship is with the accounting community, but OnPay is selling to small businesses directly, right? Like, so a business owner can go and, they're going to Google like how to start payroll, and OnPay will show up as an option. And so we, as the bookkeeping pros, can just like, if this is your favorite software, just everyone you talk to say this is what you should use, and give them your referral link, and you'll get a kickback. But they might not even ever be ready to hire a bookkeeper. Maybe they'll never hire a bookkeeper, but you've still helped them, and you've still monetized that relationship in a fair and ethical way, because like you have a solution to a problem that they had. I think this is great. And for me, especially, I have really shifted into training training my bookkeeping clients. So I really, really am more and more removed from like the hands-on, like, even though I wasn't very hands-on with payroll, I'm getting less and less in it. But people contact me. I'm meeting a lot of people who want, I tutor in FreshBooks, basically. That's what I do. Small business owners want me to teach them how to use their FreshBooks. And I can say that, like, oh, and here's what I recommend for payroll. And it's an easy thing. And then they can call me if they want me to help these set them up, but then I'm out. Like, I'm not still managing it. So
and that's what I see a lot of folks do. I was on a call with somebody just last week that they said, hey, I'm only going to be referring, but I am helping my clients navigate like what the options are, what's included. I want to make sure they're asking the right questions. And then they're like, okay, once we get this set up, like, I'm turning the corner.
Yes.
I would say, just based on some of the conversations I've had in my own life with my friends that have small businesses, they really do appreciate when people are involved in like the setup and just kind of
Okay.
like check in to make sure that we ticked all the boxes as we're going along. But yeah, like from a running payroll perspective, especially if it's a full service solution, you probably don't have to be all that involved on a day to day. And if you choose to, if you want to be the one that goes in and enters the hour and really oversees it, your business, your capacity to do that. And then you also know your clients. I've got plenty of firms that they might refer some clients, but they've got those few that really it's worth doing the extra hand holding and really helping them be comfortable and confident. And then maybe eventually you turn that over. But there's revenue options, whether you do it fully, you monitor it, or you do the referral. Okay, a couple of things on getting started, and I know we're running a tad long here, but wanted
It's okay.
to point out a couple of pointers here. So of course, deciding how you want to offer the service is the first point. Really deciding what's going to be in scope for me. And to your point, Kate, about scaling, maybe that's a decision that you make across the board. This is how I'm approaching payroll for every client. Maybe you're more like that person I was talking about before, where they've got a slightly different approach for certain clients. Maybe if you tier your service, you include more hands-on help with payroll the farther they go up the ladder of your service offering. But making those decisions around how you're going to include this, what you're going to charge for it, what's going to be in scope of services is important. And then researching those that can help you, right? What partners are going to be best for you, and then presenting that to your clients for feedback, of course, especially if you've got clients that have been asking you for this, so they've brought up what they're doing. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give for positioning services to clients is to really get an understanding of, if you don't do this, what are your clients going to do instead? Because if they need this, they need this. So are they going to be the ones that go to the vendors directly and work with them? And is that a good experience for them? Or are they getting frustrated because they don't know the right questions to ask or the right way to approach the setup or whatever it is ongoing? Are they going to look at another provider that could potentially take over their bookkeeping too, right? If they do payroll with that person, or is that person eventually going to offer them bookkeeping services or other things? So what relationship is there? And then or are they doing this with paycheck calculators and Excel spreadsheets? Because there are still business owners that are doing that, right? And maybe that's okay, but we tend to see them run into a lot of inaccuracies and problems with the tax agencies if they do that. So thinking about, what are they doing today, and how can I add the most value, depending on which of these different ways of offering I approach. So some things to keep in mind. And then I gathered together some questions to ask a payroll provider. We don't have to go through all of these individually, but we've kind of talked about it throughout, right? Getting a really solid understanding of what's included in that service, who's responsible for what am I going to have to do? What is my client doing? What is the payroll provider doing? If I'm not involved, what's the sort of scope of what's included in that subscription? Are you handling things like city and local? So sometimes people get surprised. They think, oh, I've got this solution that's going to do everything, but there's other tax types that aren't included, or they're going to charge extra for multiple states or something like that. So being mindful of different scenarios is important. And then knowing what's the experience for like the HR tasks of bringing on new employees. Are there tools that are going to help that? Can the employee onboard themselves, like entering in their own address and tax information and direct deposit information? Is there a portal where the employees can see their pay stubs, that kind of stuff? How are things like time off handling? Is there time tracking functionality? That kind of thing. Integration. So we talked a bit about accounting integrations, but also knowing, hey, does this do connections up with 401k? Does this have options for workers' comp or other types of things that maybe our clients don't need today, but they will as they grow, or maybe
Mhm.
they need coming out of the gate, or they have something already that they like using for their benefits
Right.
packages. Is it all going to work together? And then the accounting software too, of course, but we talked about that already. And then how the costs are going to look. Sometimes there are hidden fees for things like syncing up to the accounting software, or maybe corrections aren't included, or they're only included under certain conditions, or they're going to charge more for setup unless they're on the highest version. So
Right.
being mindful of that kind of stuff, and how you talk to your clients, if they're going to handle this conversation themselves, helping prep them, and being proactive around that can be helpful. And then, of course, like, what incentives are you receiving as a bookkeeper, whether that's discounts if you're going to be billing your clients directly, right? Maybe you're including this in a package and you've got all their software subscriptions bundled up, or maybe it's something where you're referring and getting a bonus back. And then being mindful too of the support costs. I've seen people looking at the options in the market, and often the types of things that they don't look at when it comes to cost is the actual cost of operation, right? Of having people go in and do things, like
Mhm.
what's that going to entail? And then the support, is that something where you're only getting support on the software itself, or are you going to be able to ask any question that comes up? Being kind of aware of what your options are and how easy it is to get help when you need it is critical, whether it's OnPay or somebody else. And then a couple of more quick things to close us out. If you're watching this live or in the next week or so, we're heading into December and getting ready for Q1. And the end of the year tends to be a great time to talk about payroll.
Yep.
Fresh start. If someone's making a switch, this is the easiest time to switch. And I'll talk about that a little more on the next slide. Your clients or your prospects might already be in the market for that. They might not. If this is something you've never done before, or even thought about talking to them about before, they might not know that you can help them navigate it or be involved with it. So if you're already working with them on other stuff, it's a great time to even just dabble in the question of what they're doing for payroll, or if they've thought about changing anything when it comes to payroll, to open up that conversation. And then if you are going to be making a switch, January, best time to do it. It's a fresh start, like I said. These are some of the things that you would need to get started. So most of the time, if a client already has payroll, these are things that you can pull out of their existing system or give your new provider access to, with the exception of direct deposit. Usually that's pretty secure and they'll have to enter that in. Or if they're a fresh start completely, right? They aren't paying employees and they're going to start
Right.
doing that. These are the types of things you'll need to know or have set up. And then if you are switching after the payroll has been run in a year, regardless of when, you're going to need all that information, but you'll also need the wage history. So say that your
Right.
client isn't ready to switch January 1st and they're just going to run a couple of payrolls in their old system before changing. That pay history absolutely needs to get included. That's probably the number one correction that we see in payroll software, because you can only do one W-2 per year. So whatever system you're issuing that year-end form for employees out of, it's got to have all the wages.
Oof.
And if you don't include it, you can have things like overpayments and filing errors. And then being mindful if tax payments have already happened. So if you are doing this, mid-year, and there's some quarterly, monthly and quarterly type payments have been made, we'll want to make sure that record's included too. So a couple things to consider here. Anything to add, Kate? I know I'm kind of rushing along.
No, this is good. So I know that y'all are smart. Payroll companies know that this is the time of year. So are y'all doing any sort of like big help for bookkeepers who want to like bring several clients over at once, or
Great question.
onboard a lot at once? I know there's usually, we'll just talk referral money here. I know there's usually like incentives for the accounting professional to do it in January too, because y'all know that it like makes it all better.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm glad you asked. So one thing to know about OnPay, so we'll do a full service setup any time of year, and we don't charge extra for that. So that's part of
Okay.
the subscription. So anytime that you're starting it up, we'll you kind of enter in the basics about the business, these things on the left hand side, and then we help with getting that history in. But yeah, if you're looking for a partner, we have
Okay.
a partner program. I talked about it a little up front. You get a dashboard, you get free payroll for your firm if you'd like, no client minimums on that. And then we'll do an ongoing revenue share or discounts for you if you're having the subscriptions billed directly. But right now we are offering a $250 billing credit on top of that for any client that you switch who runs payroll before the end of January.
Okay.
Um, so that will help you along.
So
And
do
then, of course,
people
if you're doing a batch of a bunch of clients, we can talk to you about some of our other incentives too. But yeah, ongoing revenue share starts at your third client.
Okay, I was thinking that if people do have like multiple that they need to move, they need to be getting in touch. Don't be just like our clients, y'all, who wait until the last minute. Like, reach out to OnPay now to. We've got a month left to kind of prep and get checklists and let them know how many are coming and get the employees notified that this will be happening and all the like things that have to be done. You can get a jump
Absolutely.
start on
The
that now. Don't
sooner
wait till
the sooner the
January.
better, right? Because
Yes.
once you get that stuff in, even if you're not like, all right, we're gonna run before the end of the year, right? If you're running January 1st, you want to get that direct deposit set up. You want to make sure the employees get into the portal and all of that good stuff before the year closes out or before people are out of the office because they're celebrating the new year, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, we're here to help. If you have questions, you can call us, you can email us, let us know that Bookkeeping Side Hustle sent you, of course, but happy to help you navigate whether or not OnPay would be a fit for your practice for sure.
That sounds great. We'll wrap up to keep this video short so people watch it in the future. I am very appreciative of the sessions that you've done for us. These are the best part about it is that they're evergreen. So someone watching this, I think, in the next several years, this is all going to be really meaningful. And I highly suggest people strip some of this stuff out for social media posts to or emails to let your clients know or your prospects know that you offer this. Here's why it's important. Here's a good solution. Make sure you've let OnPay know that you want to be sending people to them. So it's the perfect time of year to really get on this and start to act like a real bookkeeping business owner, y'all, because this has got to be part of what we do in some way. There's lots of ways to do it, but you can't escape payroll forever. All right. Well, we'll sign off and we'll see y'all at the next live stream. Adios, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Kate.